Welcome to the world of culture pop with Steve Mason and Sue Kalinsky. Culture, comedy, movies, TV, tech, authors, trends, pop. This is the Culture Pop Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 35 of the Culture Pop Podcast. We're recording on Saturday, February the 15th at my kitchen table. Sue sadly has got the flu. Clearly didn't get her flu shot. I don't understand why people don't get their flu shots. John Ireland, who I work with, doesn't believe in the flu shot. Never understood it. But Sue did not get her flu shot, unfortunately. Cool conversation here. One of the best movies of the last decade is Wolf of Wall Street. We get into a little bit of that. Our guest is an actor who starred in projects like FCU, Fact Checkers Union with Bill Murray, the TBS series Wrecked, and The Wolf of Wall Street for Martin Scorsese. His new film is the comedy Buffaloed, which he wrote and stars in. It's in theaters now. Brian Sacca is here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So this movie is about the racket of debt collection and sort of a debt collection mob in Buffalo, New York. Why did you choose debt collection as the subject for a movie?
Because this is all based in truth. These kind of like roving gangs of delinquent debt collectors exist. It kind of reached its peak in Buffalo, New York in around 2005, where it was an incredibly unregulated industry, and all of these bad dudes just started buying up delinquent debt and harassing people until they would pay it. And in some form, it still exists today. We still see, horrible people harassing old ladies to pay debt that doesn't exist anymore. And I grew up just outside of Buffalo, New York, and I knew that it's just a really fun, quirky town, and I saw these two kind of these two stories as a way to highlight this weird place that I grew up.
So I grew up in Toledo, Ohio. So there you go. I identified with sort of that Rust Belt sort of vibe.
Yeah.
The flat O is the thing that I loved. The number of times pizza and pop got used in the movie. That's the way we used to have that Midwestern accent, that pizza and pop kind of thing. Were all the actors, it seemed like Zoe Deutsch kind of had that down. Were the actors kind of working on that little shade of an accent?
Yeah, I mean, that was my job on set, was to make sure that everybody had at least a little bit of a affect to their voice, those A's and really bringing out the pop and all that kind of stuff. Just bringing out that Midwestern, I always say, like, the Buffalo accent is if the Chicago accent just smoked way too much. and that's kind of when I would tell people that. They're like, oh yeah, I get it. Okay, great.
So how did you learn about debt collection? Because it's complicated, these guys buying up debt. My brother, by the way, is a debt collector. That is his job. He runs a collection agency, and the joke is his job is to evict people from their homes on Christmas Eve. There's like a heartlessness about it, right?
Yeah, there really is. I had read about it. There was a few articles about it, and then I ended up talking to a few debt collectors, some in Buffalo, some. I talked to a guy out in Minnesota for a long time, and they were all like, "Yeah, we were horrible people 10 years ago," and then the government was like, "If you keep doing this, we're going to put you in jail." And they were like, "Okay, why don't we do this right?" So it was an interesting thing where it was like, because there were no rules, a lot of these guys were like, yeah, we'll do whatever we want here. But that said, even the ones that do follow the rules still legally can do some horrible stuff. It is a twisted, awful industry. And I'm sure I'm gonna get some Twitter DMs from some debt collectors telling me their explicit personal thoughts about my movie. But yeah, I mean, I get it, man. Like, I talked to a bunch of debt collectors in researching this movie. It's funny. Like, I have a friend in Buffalo who's a lawyer who was working with a debt collector, and I was like, "Oh, can I talk to your friend?" And he was, "Or to your client?" And he was like, "Never." He was like, "You don't want to be in this guy's presence, man. He's going to take all your money." I was like, "Okay, good to know. Now I know."
You know, the one thing I know from my brother is that there's a law that says if you say to a debt collector, "Do not call me back. I don't want your calls anymore," they're not supposed to be able to call back.
Yeah.
But that law gets ignored all the time, right?
Constantly. Yeah. I mean, we have a line in the movie where Peg, our main character, says there are barely any laws regulating debt collection and not enough people to enforce the ones that do exist. And that's kind of true. Like, you know, there was an incredible article that I read after we made the movie where a woman got a call from a Buffalo debt collector. I think she was in Connecticut. And he said the worst and most explicit stuff to her. And she said, you know, do not call back, all this stuff. He threatened to come and assault her, I think he was going to threaten to kill her. Said, do not call back. He called back again, threatened all this stuff. Then the husband was there the next time he called, and the husband's like, you know, you can't do this. And the husband decided to track this guy down. And so the husband ended up tracking down this debt collector, and I don't think anything happened to him still. And it was the craziest thing is all of this was over like $800. Like, it wasn't like ruining people's lives over, you know, $800 is still a lot of money, but in the larger scheme of things, like ruining someone's life or harassing them to the point of their breaking point for $800, which they probably bought, knowing how you can buy debt, they probably bought that $800 debt for maybe like $30.
Wow.
It's just insane. It's crazy. Yeah.
And you point out sort of in the postscript of the movie that debt has risen to above, household debt has risen to above $3 trillion. And so much of it is student loan debt, too, which is something that the kids that get out of college are carrying with them for years and years into their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, like, that's something, you know, this is something I think about a lot. And we reference it in the movie where our main character gets into college and realizes she can't pay for it and is afraid to take out loans because she's like, if I take out loans, by the time we pay it off, I will have paid $70,000 just in interest on those loans, not even on the loans themselves, the principal. And I think about, like, you know, I'm an older guy. When I went to college, it wasn't crazy expensive. I went to college for acting.
How much was it a semester? For me, it was like $700 a semester.
It was more. I went to NYU, so it was more than that.
Yeah.
It was like
I went to Bowling Green State University, so I went to.
Hey, Bowling Green was legit, man. I had a bunch of friends that went to Bowling Green. They had a great hockey program, if I remember correctly.
Huge hockey program. Won the national championship. Rob Blake, the Hall of Famer, went there.
Yes, that's my buddy went to Bowling Green. I think he was a goalie for a couple of years at Bowling Green. So I went to NYU because they had a great acting program, and when I was there, it was 21, I think, a year. So I got out of there with some student debt, and it was bad, and it took a long time to pay it off. To get the exact same degree that I got now, which is an acting degree, which is probably the most impractical degree you could ever get in your life, would cost like $270,000. Oh. And I think about that, and I'm like, that's insane. Like, the amount of debt that you would accrue to get a degree that has no practical application is just brutal. And so that's something, I think about that.
People are dreamers, though, man. People are dreamers.
Hey, if they want to follow in my path, you could do that. It just took me like 12 to 15 years to really make things happen. So good luck. Just run the marathon. So
your lead character, Zoe Deutsch, who I loved on The Politician, she plays your lead here, and she's a scammer. She's a schemer. She was going to make money no matter what. Did you know anybody that was like that?
Tons of people like that. And I specifically wrote that main character as a woman because we've seen so many movies. We all know people like that who are desperate and will do anything to get out of the situation that we're in. But in movies, that's usually represented as a man. And we all accept it as a man. When you see a dude who will do whatever it takes, who will hustle to do whatever it takes to make money, we accept that. As a woman, it's a little bit off-putting, and it's just because it's not represented. Yet, it's represented in entertainment. Yet, growing up, I saw so many people, so many women and men who would do anything to get out of our town that we grew up in, and most of them succeeded, but some of them didn't.
How does do you consider this to be a female empowerment story?
I do. I mean, Peg is an incredibly flawed character, and that is, I think, a great representation of women, even though she, in some ways, you could consider her despicable. I like it because the movie is not putting her on a pedestal. The movie is saying, like, here's somebody with incredible dreams and incredible passion and hustle, but is super flawed and super self-centered and needs to learn a lesson and come down to earth a little bit. And because of that, I see it as an empowerment movie.
There's that scene with Noah Reid, who plays JJ, where he says to her, "You're using me like you use everybody else. Sometimes people do nice things for each other without a return." First of all, Noah Reid is I'm a huge fan because I watch Schitt's Creek. And
he's a champion.
He's great on Schitt's Creek. But that sort of encapsulates Peg and kind of who she is in the world.
Yeah, no, that was exactly it. Like, that line itself could also kind of come from me spending the last 20 years in entertainment. A lot of relationships and friendships in entertainment are kind of transactional, where it's like, ooh, you're doing well, maybe I could get a role in your thing, something like that. And me coming from a small town, I like to hang out with people where we're just friends for friends' sake. And so I think there's that, despite it being relative to Peg as a character, that's also relative to me in life. Like, I like to surround myself with people who aren't expecting a return on their investment, if that makes sense.
Sure, does. How hard is it to actually get a movie made? You talk about, beg, borrow, steal. It's really tough to get a movie made. How did this one get made?
This one was a relatively short process in the features world, in that I wrote it 4 or 5 years ago. And it was the first thing I'd written by myself. I was with a writing partner, like Fact Checkers, the thing you had mentioned. I worked with a partner. We did YouTube videos for a long time. We were quite successful in doing it. Yeah. Getting Bill Murray in our videos. It was great. So this was the first thing I wrote by myself, and which usually in LA, that means it goes in trash. Like it's rare to get a response off of your first scripts, but I sent it to some people I knew, and they got excited, and then they started sending it around, and we got a director attached, and off of that director got some producers excited about it, who were financing producers, and then we had a long conversation about who we saw having the kind of energy and chops to represent Peg in the direction that we wanted to, and luckily we thought about Zoe, and she was just as excited and interested, and she's just as much of a force in real life as she is in the movie, and I'm grateful that she did it. So basically, once Zoe was on board, we just had to figure out scheduling, and so that's where we wanted to get it done quickly before The Politician, and so I think we had 4 weeks before she started shooting The Politician that we could slot this in, and we just went up to Toronto and shot as fast as we could, and fingers crossed we got a movie.
So the wings thing is real, I'm assuming, in Buffalo.
Yes.
What are the two places?
Yeah. Anchor Bar and Duff's. But here's a great Buffalo anecdote. We showed this movie at the Buffalo International Film Festival last October. The first question after the movie screened, a woman stand up and said, "You mentioned Anchor Bar and Duff's in the movie." And I was like, "Yeah, that's the two places everybody talks about." She's like, "No. Why didn't you mention every other wing place in the movie?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she just started listing every wing place in Buffalo. I was like, "Well, that doesn't, it's just like the idea of the two." And she's like, "Well, you could have mentioned Potler's, and how about Steve's Pig and Ostra?" And like, she just goes down the list. I was like, "Thank you for your appreciation." It was perfect Buffalo.
Yeah, the wings thing is a great bit of business. The judge and the wings thing is fantastic. Was it cool to screen it in Buffalo?
It was great to screen it in Buffalo. It was nerve-wracking because I'm poking fun at Buffalo in a loving way. Like, I love this city. I spent my formative years there. I still have a lot of friends that live there, and I go back whenever I can. But, I'm making fun of the accent. I'm making fun of our obsession with the Bills and with wings and all of that. And Buffalonians can be a defensive crowd. Like, you never know if you're going to get some people are like, "Oh yeah, you just represent our city totally well." Other people want to know what my home address is so they can come and find me. Like, there's a polarizing response in Buffalo.
So you played a prominent role in Wolf of Wall Street, and this movie has got kind of is it fair to say it's got kind of a Wolf of Wall Street vibe to it? Totally.
Very, very much fair. It's like, I'll say this. I learned a lot. I was on the set of Wolf of Wall Street for 5 months, and Martin Scorsese is an incredibly generous director in that he was talking about the choices he made that would enhance the storytelling. And it was like a masterclass in filmmaking. And so this being the first script I wrote after that, a lot of what I learned and what I, just kind of acquired through osmosis being on the set of Wolf influenced this script. But at the same time, the industries are also kind of similar. Like in Wolf, we're hounding people to buy penny stocks. In this, it's a little bit more threatening because we're hounding people to repay their delinquent debts. But yeah, there are definitely similarities. I think the story is very different in it. The characters are very different in it, but sure, the idea of a boiler room, there's a little bit of a boiler room in Buffalo when you're at the GBA agency, which is reflective of Wolf.
So you're on the set with Martin Scorsese in a Martin Scorsese movie. How is he with actors? What did he say to you? What advice does he give you while you're on the set?
He was the greatest. I feel so incredibly lucky to have been able to spend that time with him. It's one of those weird moments. Like, I always tell the story. It was like my second day on set when I am, I'm sorry, I heard my daughter playing hide and seek in the background. I was like, "What's going on down there?" It's just my daughter playing hide and seek. I get distracted. So second day on set, and I'm doing this scene. It got cut from the movie, but it was a scene where we're playing beer pong with lewds, and we're talking about the scam that we're going to do. And Scorsese wanted us to improvise, so I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of improvising, going off the rails. And Scorsese is literally 1 foot from me at his monitor, cracking up, losing his shit. And I'm talking to Leo, who's across this pool table from me. Leo's losing his shit. And I'm just thinking, like, I'm sitting here trying to do my best to be funny and be an improviser and stay in character while this living legend is within arm's length of me, laughing at my performance that I can see on his monitor because the camera's on me. It was the most surreal moment of my life. But that's, he was so supportive like that, where he was just like, be funny, be in character. His whole thing was he had an idea of what he needed from the scene, but wanted a little bit more from that. So he would shoot until he got what he needed, but then he would say, have fun, do something fun, do something different. And that's such a pleasure to be on set with. We were there a lot, and there would just be days where he would be like, Brian, come over here, go over there and just do some shit. And then I'd go over in the background of the scene and have fun. And a lot of that stuff made it in the movie. A lot of my random little screaming at people or pretending I'm on a phone call or stuff like that, are tiny little snippets that you see in the movie, which were great. Yeah.
What was it like being at the premiere of a movie like that?
It was the best, man. It was great. I mean, I remember it was really cold the day that it was in December, I believe. And my crew in the movie, all of us were kind of together. And it was, I want to say it was over a year since we finished shooting. So it was a little bit of a reunion for us to see each other. And it was just the best. We to get to go down, it was I believe it was a yellow carpet, to be able to get down to walk down the yellow carpet with your friends and friends you made on the movie who I'm still close with, and then see people laugh at you in this 1,000-seat theater, see people laugh at your jokes. It was really special.
Okay,
and still yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, impossible question, but what is your favorite Scorsese movie?
I mean, I've got to say Wolf of Wall Street, because anytime I watch it, I'm like, oh, I remember that day on set. That was awesome. But the one I've seen the most by far is Goodfellas.
Yeah.
I've seen that movie 30 times, not even more. I can quote every line in that movie before I did Wolf.
Goodfellas is unbelievable. I am a big fan of Casino.
Casino again too, masterful. Just the costumes in Casino could be their own movie. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, just a little Don Rickles in Casino.
Yeah,
such a cool piece of casting.
Scorsese told a great story of I believe, and it was years ago when he told this, but Joe Pesci couldn't act with Don Rickles because he thought he was so funny. He was always laughing at him because Don Rickles is the funniest guy in the world. And there's that scene where Joe Pesci has to beat him up. And so Scorsese said to Rickles, start ragging on him, man. Start doing your thing. So Rickles, before that day, just starts laying into Joe Pesci, doing the Don Rickles, no holds barred, just ragging on him. And then they get to that scene, and Scorsese's Joe Pesci exploded. And Scorsese's like, oh my God, he's going to actually kill him. But he didn't, and everything was fine. And then Joe Pesci was getting him back for that. And nobody, it was all fine. But he was it was just thinking about that. Those three legends are all kind of messing with each other in this triangle of dudes. It's great.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So you make this movie. It's not an easy thing to make a movie. You're the screenwriter. Does this open the door for other stuff?
Yeah, I got a couple other movies that are moving forward that I'm really excited about. I think what this opens the door for even more is directing my next movie. Even though I wrote and produced this one after being on sets for 20 years and learning so much from Tanya, who's an incredible director, I'm ready to get behind the camera and shape my next movie myself. So that's what I'm pushing forward right now.
Awesome. Well, Buffaloed is from Magnolia Films. It's in theaters now. Will soon be on demand and streaming service and all the other ways you watch movies. Congratulations, man. It's a really, really fun movie. And I love the stories from the set of Wolf of Wall Street, too. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's so much fun to be here.
Accident or injury, call Jacob and Ronnie. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mace. If you or a loved one is injured in any kind of accident, please don't wait. Call Jacob immediately for a free consultation. That's right, free. When an accident happens, it can turn your world upside down, so put the best on your side. Jacob doesn't even get paid unless you win. First name, first thought, first call, Jacob, Jacob, Jacob. After an accident, 24 hours a day, call 844-24-JACOB or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
And thanks to the law offices of Jacob M. Ronnie, who are supporters of this podcast. I appreciate Jacob a lot. Really cool movie. Jeremy Teicher, the director, his real-life spouse, Alexi Pappas, in the lead, and then Nick Kroll, who's so great doing Big Mouth, is the co-star. Olympic Dreams is the name of the movie. Check it out. Thanks very much for listening to the Culture Pop Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Appreciate you being out there every week.
Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll see you next week for an all-new episode of Culture Pop.